The EU wants to scan all your private messages. Who could have guessed? I guess we should go back to, writing letters again. Because then they can't scan them. Like, literally, they can't. And the mail security stuff, the government isn't allowed, at least in Germany, to just read your letters. They aren't. They need a court order to do that.
So we've recently talked a lot about government overreach going on in the UK, in Australia, in Canada, even here in the States a bit in the US. But
You mean everywhere where the members of the World Economic Forum sits in the parliaments? Who could have guessed?
now let's talk about the EU itself, the European Union, because they've got this bright idea, real light bulb moment here. This article headline from Cointelegraph reads, EU proposal to scan all private messages gains momentum. With 19 EU member states backing it, the chat control proposal could mandate pre-encryption message scanning on apps like WhatsApp and Signal by October.
That's horrible.
So we already saw Australia actually.
Wait. On apps like WhatsApp and Signal. What does that mean? Does Discord fall under that? Or other, apps like that? I don't know. Likely. Possibly.
By October. So we already saw Australia actually, about Signal specifically, trying to do similar stuff to Signal. And the Signal boss, as they put it, essentially said if Australia rolls this out on their app, they're just going to leave Australia entirely. But similarly, now I guess we have the EU trying to scan various platforms. So it just fits the theme that we've been discussing lately with how various governments across the world are trying to enact similar regulations.
I wonder why. Ooh, I wonder why. If you know, you know. And if people don't know, what are you? How long have you been on the internet for? Not very long. Are you still watching mainstream media? You know, the news? Really? Why?
Now here's the EU. The article goes on to say, a controversial European Union proposal dubbed chat control is regaining momentum, with 19 out of 27 EU member states reportedly backing the measure.
19 out of what? 19 out of what? 19 out of 27. There it is. All up there. Which is more than half. Which is not good.
Plan would mandate that messaging platforms, including WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram, must scan every message, photo, and video sent by users starting in October. Even
Which would cause a lot of costs for news apps. Where would they get the money from? This kind of is, I think, a try to destroy these apps and implement something that's basically owned by the government, and then you just have all your messages. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, like at all.
if end-to-end encryption is in place, popular French tech blogger Corbyn wrote on Monday. Denmark reintroduced the proposal on July 1st, the first day of its EU Council presidency. France, once opposed, is now in favor. Corbyn said,
Of course,
citing Patrick
of course, France is in favor. They want total control. Of course they are. France is falling apart, and they want to control the falling apart. It's very, very simple.
Breyer, a former member of the European Parliament for Germany and the European Pirate Party. Belgium, Hungary, Sweden, Italy, and Spain are also in favor, while Germany remains undecided.
Wait, Hungary is in favor? No. Belgium, Hungary, Sweden, Italy, and Spain are also in favor. Oh no, not Hungary. No. Germany is undecided? That's surprising.
However, if Berlin joins the majority, a qualified council vote could push the plan through by mid-October, Corbyn said. A qualified majority in the EU Council is achieved when two conditions are met. First, at least 55% of member states, meaning 15 out of 27, must vote in favor.
Shit.
Second, those countries must represent at least 65% of the EU's total population.
Ah, crap. Germany is the most populated country in the continent. That's bad.
And they include a tweet from this guy, Pavel Luptak. My bad on the last name. I probably did not say that right. But he says on Twitter, the communist EU in action again. Slovakia, of course, supports this dystopian proposal. Austria, the Netherlands, and Poland are against it. The Czech Republic has not yet made a decision. Chat control. The EU orders all private chats to be scanned starting from October 2025. Under Denmark's EU presidency, a revised proposal mandates client-side scanning of WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram even before encryption is applied. Backed by around 19 countries, including France, Belgium, it targets adoption by October 14th, so a little redundancy there with the info we already got. But then he says, critics warn, breaks true end-to-end encryption, enables mass surveillance of all messages, AI detection misfires on innocent content, threatens digital privacy, dissent, and minors' rights. Privacy regulators issue strong warnings. The Protect EU law pushes even further decryption access by 2030. Peer encryption scanning on devices.
Which, by the way, is the goal. 2030, you know, is the line where they want to, you know, want to get rid of all private property and stuff like that, and, you know, freedom of speech and things like that. But you didn't hear that from me, because that's just a conspiracy theory.
Instead of weakening encryption, the plan seeks to implement client-side scanning, meaning software embedded in users' devices that inspects content before it's encrypted. A bit like if the post office came to read all your letters in your living room before you put them in the envelope.
Yes.
Corbyn said. He added that the real target isn't criminals who use encrypted.
Of course not. Never have been. Never have been. The criminals have never been the target of anything of this. How can I say it? Because it never affects the criminals, because they just do whatever. Like banning guns and knives in Germany. The criminals aren't affected because they're already criminals. They just have guns and knives. It's just that, you know, law-abiding citizens can't have guns and knives. So it makes it easier for criminals to be criminals. While the law-abiding citizens can't do anything about anything. And that's how we get dictatorships.
Or decentralized channels, but ordinary users whose private conversations would now be open to algorithmic scrutiny. The proposal cites the prevention of child abuse material as its justification. However, it would result in mass surveillance by means of fully automated real-time surveillance of messaging and chats, and the end of privacy of digital correspondence. Breyer
of course. That was the plan from the beginning. Yes. They want that, of course. I mean, they already know where you are all the time. I mean, you have one of these, right? Then they know where you are all the time. And by the way, the microphones of your phones are always open. So with Alexa, microphones are always open. The companies hear everything you say. So now the government comes and tells them, yeah, we want to know that. Give us the information. You think the companies say no? Of course not. Of course they give the information. Why wouldn't they? They make money with it. They either give the information or can't do business anymore. Oh, they give the information. Of course.
Beyond scanning, the package includes mandatory age verification, effectively removing anonymity from messaging platforms. Digital freedom groups are asking citizens to contact their MEPs, sign petitions, and push back before the law becomes irreversible. So yeah, lots of very disturbing and suspicious stuff going on here, to say the least. But something that sticks out to me in particular is how, if I'm understanding this right, apparently if a member country of the EU tries to domestically pass a new law, for argument's sake, let's just say it's like their version of UK's Online Safety Act, and it doesn't end up passing domestically, politicians can still try and get the EU itself to pass this hypothetical bill, which, if it then...
Yes. the EU makes a law, and then all the member states have to comply with that law. That's why the gun laws in a lot of countries are so strict. Like after the attacks on Paris almost 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago, they banned assault rifles. What? And Germany went all with it. You even before that law, you couldn't buy assault rifles. And by the way, the weapons that were used for these attacks were AKs. You can't buy AKs in Germany, or basically anywhere not East Europe. And with AKs, they're semi-automatic AKs. You can't shoot fully automatic, so they aren't assault rifles. Just by definition, they aren't. Just like the AR-15 is not an assault rifle because it's semi-automatic. You have to pull the trigger for each bullet you want to fire. That's not an assault rifle. But they banned that, of course, because it's not about, actual terrorism or anything like that. Because a terrorist, they just get the weapons illegally. I mean, that's not hard, especially today, because a lot of the weapons that was sent to the Ukraine, all of a sudden flooding the European black market. Oh, what a surprise. Yeah. You can get an AK illegally, easy. It's not a problem. And you most likely get it cheaper than a legal weapon. Because that's just how it is. You can easily smuggle weapons over open borders. I mean, the borders in Europe are fundamentally open, like all of them. So you can smuggle things all the time. No one controls you. And that's what's happening, like literally.
Passes in the EU, those member states would be forced to roll out that bill domestically, which in other words means that by proxy of the EU, it essentially gives corrupt politicians a second chance at passing something domestically, even if their own citizens are against it. Then we got this little image that essentially seems to recap what we just went over. So let's finish off the article. Here's the final section. France faces societal collapse over censorship. Last month, Telegram founder Pavel Durov warned that France risks societal collapse if it continues down a path of political censorship and regulatory overreach. Durov was arrested in France in August 2024 after being accused of failing to moderate his app to reduce criminality. He also alleged that French intelligence officials...
While at the same time, the government does nothing to stop criminals being criminals. Like literal criminals, like, rapist and, thieves, drug dealers, pimps, weapon dealers, human traffickers. The government does nothing to stop them. But hey, you say something bad on the internet, now you go to prison for 10 years.
Officials approached him earlier this year with requests to censor pro-conservative content ahead of the May 2025 Romanian election, a request he says he refused. Look, the sad fact is there are some horrific things that does occur on these apps.
Sure.
But clearly...
The most horrific things on these apps could be prevented by parents not letting their kids on these apps. It's literally that. And when someone comes, misogyny on the internet, half of the hate against women on the internet comes from other women. How about women stop being hating other women? They can't because that's in the nature, which is horrifying. How much women hate women, it's horrifying.
The government having this sort of power can be easily abused, as we just read, essentially, to even control like political opposition. This can so quickly spiral into just like overt authoritarianism where like, oh, they sent something that was critical of the government, yeah, knock on their door, or something like that, which we've already been seeing playing out in the UK. For example, we talked about this before. Apparently from gov.uk, they had said that that like if you have the opinion that Western culture is under threat from mass migration and a lack of
Which it is. Like, it literally is. No, I might get arrested for saying that. Because I live in Germany.
integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups, which many people in the UK do have that opinion, and it seems to be an opinion that is quickly proliferating as people see what's going on in their country. Well,
yeah, if you see that when, the entire organized crime is controlled by certain groups of people, then you might tend to, not like that certain group of people.
they say that's cultural nationalism and therefore also extreme right wing and ultimately a terrorist ideology. That image was apparently a part of an online training course by this organization called Prevent, where they say Prevent is one part of the government's overall counterterrorism strategy, and it's described as a multi-agency program that, quote, aims to stop individuals becoming terrorists, unquote. A Home Office spokesman said, Prevent is not about restricting debate or free speech, but about protecting those susceptible to radicalization. It's really some pretty backwards stuff. I mean, many citizens in the UK are in fact concerned about radicals using asylum as a shield to come into their country and then do horrible, horrific things to women and children there.
Same in Germany and in Sweden, almost like it's happening all over Europe, except for the East. They don't let that happen. Oh, I wonder why. I wonder what's going on there. Yeah, if you are a woman and you want to visit Europe, don't go to North or Middle Europe, not even East. You should only go to East Europe. That's the safest place you can be. In West Europe, the not former communist countries, don't go into the big cities and stay away from people who aren't European or East and Southeast Asian, because they are also fine.
And instead of the government,
you haven't heard that from me,
helping their concerned citizens, they are turning around and labeling them as the actual radicals. In some cases,
of course, that's a plan.
Cases, it actually is even worse than that, because they're treating the literal victims this way when the victims come out and speak about this stuff.
Yes.
And statistically, victims of these awful crimes don't always come forward. A lot of people try to bury these things and not think about them, let alone talk about them to other people, especially on like a national level. And then imagine you already have all those concerns, which are scientifically documented very well. But on top of all that stuff, you then also have to be worried about your own government coming after you for speaking about the horrific things that were done to you. I mean, they should be protecting these people, not...
The government don't see you as people. They see you as livestock. You are their slaves. That's where this is going. And that's how these people see you. You have to keep that always in mind.
Trying to intimidate them into silence or labeling them a terrorist for speaking about this stuff. It's just so backwards, as mentioned. Hopping over to the subreddit privacy, we'll take a look at some reception to the news that we went over regarding the EU, with the top response saying, I was mentioning this in one of the comments I made. The next step is to ban encryption. For example, banning apps that encrypt messages. All I'm going to say is you can't comply your way out of this mess. The top response that's a bit more long-winded reads, this was never really about protecting children or national security. It's about quietly removing the concept of private communication and doing it in a way that seems reasonable enough to avoid pushback. Notice who's under pressure and who isn't. Platforms built entirely on surveillance and behavioral profiling, no problem. But the few that refuse to break E2E encryption, that design systems to keep third parties, including governments, out, and that don't monetize users as data points, those are the ones being targeted. It's about forcing the holdouts to comply by regulation, by threat, or by slow attrition. Call it whatever you want. But this isn't policy, it's coercion in disguise, and they're counting on the public being too distracted to realize which walls are being torn down. I regularly write to EU bodies, the Commission, and members of the EP. I talk to friends, colleagues, and anyone who will listen, because if we just sit back and watch, one day we'll wake up in a world where privacy no longer exists and control and surveillance are complete. And
In Germany, we had that in the East, in the DDR, in the German Democratic Republic, which of course they had votes, but they also only had one party. I think they had votes every 10 years or something like that. Yeah. Well, they had complete, there was no privacy at all. Like, the Stasi, their secret police, their secret agency, you know, secret. They have databases on everyone. They had spies everywhere. Not even paid spies, just spies, because, oh, you don't want to work with us? Oh, now you are suspicious. So you had literally husbands spying on their wives and their kids spying on their parents, friends spying on friends. That's why and that's not only in East Germany, that's in the entirety of the East Bloc. That's why they don't trust people who are too friendly, because they are always, what do they want from me? Because that's what, you know, the friendly people, that were the spies. So there was completely no trust in anyone over there, in anyone. And especially not, they didn't trust. Imagine living in a society where you can't trust the government, you can't trust anyone. Not the person you are married to, not your parents, not your friends, not your kids, not your teachers, not your colleagues, not your boss, not your subordinates, not the random person you're crossing path on the street, but when you go shopping. You can't trust anyone, because everyone can be a spy, and there it's a high likelihood that they are a spy. And I mean, not a spy for, you know, getting paid to do these things, and ideologically they do it because they are scared, and they do it because they want to be seen as on the side of the government. And that's where this is headed to. I guarantee you, that's the goal.
That's the latest. Let me know what you guys think about this stuff in the comments, and as always, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed my coverage, please also consider liking and or subscribing. Helps out greatly, and I appreciate it. I'll see you in the comments here and in the next one.
Hey, what's up, guys? Riff here. So today we're going to be looking at a...
So we've recently...
Great video. Again, great video. Hero Eye, great guy. Super video. Awesome.